My hair, as usual, is a disaster. Anyway, we're live. We're live. I haven't had a live stream for a couple of weeks just because nobody ever shows up. So I kind of got discouraged. But I decided for March, I'm going to stick to my schedule of every Sunday at noon Eastern Standard Time to do live streams. So, what the heck just happened? Did the Democrats actually refuse to stand for protecting American citizens at the State of the Union last Tuesday? Or was something else going on? I think something else was going on. At the State of the Union, this is how it's been framed, right? I've even heard this on CNN. At the State of the Union, President Trump asked everyone to stand if they supported protecting U.S. citizens. The Republicans stood, the Democrats did not. And of course, this goes kaboom all over social media, right? But is that what he really said? We're going to talk about that in a minute. And here's the real question. Was this about patriotism or politics? Politics. So today we're going to break down exactly what Trump said, why the Democrats stayed seated, what Chuck Schumer said afterwards, and if some of you guys are on the right, believe me, there's a lot of people on the left that don't love Chuck Schumer either. And what this moment, I'm also going to talk a little bit at the end about what this moment tells us about where American politics is headed. And I'm going to talk about James Tallarico, which if you don't know who he is, stay tuned. This is going to be a fairly short live stream because, again, I'm expecting nobody to be here. Let me see. There's nobody here. I don't expect anybody to show up. I mean, sometimes people show up and they're here for like 2-3 seconds. They see that there's nobody in the room and they just click out. It's the same thing with trying to get comments. If nobody has made a comment on one of my videos, I don't get any comments. But if some people, let's say there were 2 or 3 people who commented, then I'm much more likely to get more and more comments. So if there were people in this room, there would be more and more people willing to hang around. And anyway, it is what it is. Oh my goodness, I think there's one person who's here, although that one person could very well just be me. Oh, well. So let's get into this a little bit. First of all, you have to know that the State of the Union, that's not just something that presidents decide they're going to do. It's required for them to do this. It's in the Constitution, Article 2, which is about the executive branch. I think it's Section 3. So it's required for them to do this. And I'm also going to talk a little bit, which I didn't notice till later, that a lot of the Supreme Court justices, it's supposed to be the House and the Senate and the Supreme Court. But a lot of the Supreme Court justices didn't show up. And some of them surprised me, like, where the heck was Clarence Thomas? Anyway, we'll talk about that. That's at the very end. So during the State of the Union address, Trump decided to basically pivot to immigration and crime, right? He framed this issue. You got to give the man kudos, okay? I really can't stand the son of a bitch. But you got to give him kudos because he is masterful at manipulating the media. That he can do. Number one grifter in the country. That he can do. And he did that in spades last Tuesday. So Trump frames this immigration and crime thing as one of public safety, right? And he challenged lawmakers, supposedly, if you support protecting American citizens, stand up. But is that what he really said? No. What he said is, quote, well, he says, if you agree with this, strike that. If you agree with this statement, stand up. The first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens. So all this stuff about, do you protect American citizens? Everybody wants to protect American citizens, but the fact that he's saying you don't have to protect the illegal aliens, it's very important that you just protect the Americans. This is exactly what he did on The Apprentice. He just loves this shit. He loves to be able to put two different sides against each other and have them battle it out. I think he thinks it's good for competition. He thinks that's a good way to go. Anyway, so he says the first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens. So, of course, the Republicans all rose, and a lot of the Democrats remained seated. Then he says something, look at these people. They're crazy. These people are crazy, right? What a moment. It was very powerful television, something he's really, really good at doing. And the optics were immediate. And of course, like I said, social media went crazy. And they talked about it. They're still talking about it. Even after I'm doing this on March 1st, Sunday, March 1st, we've just bombed Iran. Distraction, just saying. And yet they're still talking about this. How is it possible that the Democrats didn't stand for protecting Americans? But that's you have to think about the context of what's going on. So basically, it compresses a complex policy debate. You're talking about immigration, enforcement, due process, funding, border security, into a symbolic loyalty test. It just comes down to that. Are you loyal to me? Because I'm going to defend the American citizens. Look at all these Democrats that are sitting here. They don't want to defend they don't want to protect American citizens. That's not true. Absolutely not true. So what do you do? If you stand, you validate that framing. If you remain seated, then you look like you're opposed to the underlying value of protecting Americans. Anyway, it was genius. I have to admit, it was very, very, very good. But it's not that the Democrats are opposed to protecting citizens. They're just rejecting that narrative, that very misleading narrative that is binary. You either protect American citizens or you protect illegal aliens. And look, when it comes to protecting people, that is the job of the American government. Absolutely. But it's to protect everybody. Oh, did he mention that his ICE agents killed 2 American citizens? Didn't do a real good job of protecting those 2 folks, did they? So anyway, Democrats, could you guess that I'm a Democrat? I'm very liberal, but I'm not woke. I'm not an AOC Democrat, much to my children's chagrin. But see, I should have been practicing ahead of time. Our position is basically that, protecting U.S. citizens and reforming immigration, they're not two mutually exclusive things. You could do both. Of course, I've been talking about comprehensive immigration reform. That's a term that gets thrown around a lot. What that means, comprehensive immigration reform, that basically means you got to reform the whole immigration system, which I have plenty of videos that explain how somebody can become legal in this country. The whole thing, the waits are ridiculous. The wait time is just crazy. And And not to mention all the stuff that he's done. I haven't even done any videos about that, about those 75 countries that people can't get legal, even though they're doing everything that they're supposed to do. They're doing everything correctly. But if you happen to have been born in the wrong country, you're not allowed here. We're not going to finalize any of this stuff. So the whole immigration system needs to be reformed. Not just the border, but how people apply to come here, what kind of categories people are in. Right now, there's two types. It's family-based or it's business-based. You can have some businesses that need executives that are able to come here. If you're married to a U.S. citizen, you're supposed to be able to legalize. There's a couple of different ways to do that, depending on whether you entered legally or if you're still in your home country. Or anyway, the whole thing needs to be redone. You need to really sit down and focus on this. But like I said, I've been talking about this since 2001. Me and every other immigration attorney. Has anybody done anything? Marco Rubio tried. I don't know when that was. He was down in Florida, and he did try, and he got some kudos from a lot of Democrats until he realized that he didn't have the votes to get this proposed law he was going to do. He didn't have the votes. So the minute he found out that he didn't have the votes, he dropped it like it was a hot potato, and that was the end of that. So you also don't want these broad generalizations, right? Because this hurts the immigrant communities. It doesn't keep anybody safe. And yes, do we want Americans to be safe? Yes, but we want everyone who's here to be safe, right? And that includes people who entered illegally, who entered as students legally, who entered as visitors. Anybody who's here should be able to be protected by our government. It's not you either protect the American citizens or you protect the illegal aliens, the hordes of illegal aliens that are here. So the one thing I can say, it did create a lot of viral clips. So Chuck Schumer, do I have to talk about him? Let me see. Is anybody here? No. Oh, there was one, and she just dropped off. Great. Wonderful. So let's talk about Chuck Schumer if we have to. He addressed this, right? And he has repeatedly argued that the Democrats support public safety but oppose what he characterizes as fear-based political tactics. Fear-based political tactics, also known as political stunts. And like I just said, this is not mutually exclusive. And he describes this whole comprehensive policy, and including border management, law enforcement funding, legal pathways. He just describes this as political theater. I mean, that's what it is. Now, look, it's fine for him to go all highbrow and decide that, it's just political theater. It's just political theater. But guess what? Johnny Q. Public, who's sitting back in his, on a sofa watching this, is aghast that the Democrats don't stand. To kind of poo-poo it, as he is so good at doing, Schumer needs to acknowledge the fact that he needs to come off his high horse, my ever so humble opinion, and talk to the regular people, which is why I'm going to talk about that Texas primary coming up on Tuesday. Now, in the past, whenever they talked about immigration, Schumer agreed to, and actually not just agreed, but emphasized bipartisan solutions. that both sides should come together and both sides need to discuss this, see if they can come up with something. But that's, like I said, nobody's willing to do it. Immigration is such a hot potato in the United States. Everybody's afraid. You know what it is? It's all these politicians that they're afraid they're going to lose their job. So they don't want to take a stand. You were sent to Washington to actually do something, but they're afraid to do anything. First, they were afraid of Trump, that he would primary them, which he did a couple of times. Afraid of Trump. Then they're afraid of the electorate, meaning the regular people. I mean, what the hell? Have some cojones. I'll say it in Spanish. Have some cojones. Do your job. Do what you're supposed to be doing. Handle the tough questions like immigration. Do something about this. Not sure it's going to happen. So, but why? Okay, let's step back. Why would the Democrats knowingly risk such bad optics? I mean, they have to know. They have to know. When he asks the question the way he asked it, and they stay seated, it's going to look horrible. And it did. So why in the world would they do that? Well, there's a couple of possible reasons. One, base mobilization. They think that their core voters care more about resisting Trump's framing than about the appearance of unity. I think that's BS. Standing could, and connected to that is that standing could demoralize parts of their base who view Trump's immigration rhetoric as harmful. That's more like it. You can't, because you're really just pooping all over the community of immigrants that are here, that do a lot of the work that the American people don't want to do, which is absolutely true. You can scream and yell about if they paid more. No, they do work that nobody wants to do. Would you like to pick mushrooms? How much would they have to pay you an hour to lean over, dig into the manure, and pick out mushrooms? $20 an hour? $25 an hour? $30 an hour? It's not about paying them more. Americans don't want to do that. They don't want to do that. In Jersey, I live very close to New Jersey, and in the summers, they're always having a hard time finding people who pick the peaches and the corn and the tomato. The farms are in great need of some of these immigrants. And listen, not all immigrants do jobs like that. There's, who do you think changes the sheets and cleans the rooms in the hotels? Who do you think is cooking your meal at some local restaurants? Who do you think is another thing? Well, also doing contract work, lawn care and things like that. I once had a client. I don't think it was actually a client. I think he came in for a consultation. He had lived in the DC area, and he had worked, I'm going to say this is going back to about 2012, maybe even before that. It was under Bush, under Bush, I think this Bush number 2, that he worked on the ground crew of the White House. He had no legal papers, had zero legal right to do that, but he was doing it. They didn't deport him, did they? So anyway, another reason. This is one of the reasons I don't do live streams, because I get myself off onto tangents, and I haven't figured out how to edit. There is a way to edit live streams. I have to learn how to do that so I can cut some of this fluff out. So number 1 is base mobilization. I'm calling bullshit on that. They don't. Who the heck are the core? The core supporters right now of the Democrats? I don't know. 2 is long-term narrative. If you believe the framing is misleading, participating reinforces it. That's true. That's probably one of the reasons is that you can't stand for that because you think it's misleading, which it is. You're saying you either support American citizens or you don't. You strike that. You either support American citizens or you support illegal aliens. You can't do both. So you don't want to participate in that. Um, and then refusing loyalty traps. Well, we all know Trump is big on loyalty. Of course, loyalty only runs one way with this guy, right? So some lawmakers believe participating in those visuals strengthens the tactic long term. Really? Here's the rub about that. Politics is emotional, as we've seen. I mean, I'm 68 years old. I have never seen family members fighting with each other, friends refusing to speak to each other. I've never seen it like this. It doesn't have to be like this. We're quite capable of having two different thoughts in our mind at the same time, of backing two different ideas at the same time. But Trump doesn't want to do that. And every opportunity he gets, he tries to pull us apart. I've said it since 1978. When everybody was talking about race relations and things are so bad, the whites versus people of color. And I always said, it's not about race. It's about class. It's about class. The rich people versus the very poor people. And nowhere has that been more evident than right here during Trump's administrations, both of them, but particularly this second one. He's all in favor of the billionaires. Couldn't give a rat's behind about the rest of us. And I don't mean just the illegal immigrants. I don't mean just the middle class, the lower class. If you're not one of the big boys, he doesn't give a damn about you, but he'll protect them. I mean, look, the Epstein files. Boy, I am really going off track here, but Epstein files. He lets most, not all, of whatever is in those files come out. He redacted the names of the people who are accused of being pedophiles. Redacted them, did not redact the names of the survivors, victims/survivors. He doesn't care about those women, even though he cares about his buddies and making money. If you remember how much money he's made, it's over $1 billion he and his family have made since in just 1 year. This is going to go down as the most corrupt president we've ever had. Just saying, not to piss off the right, but it is. So, anything else? There was something I was going to say here. Oh, that's another thing. This whole thing about this political theater and how horrible it is. This has been going on for years. In fact, my eldest, who's 32, she says, "Mom, this happens every single year. If your president is from your party, you jump up and clap for him, and if he's not, you just sit on your hands." But I can remember a time when it wasn't like that. It doesn't have to be like that. One of the things I found interesting, which I just sort of noticed this past week, there were only 4 Supreme Court justices there. That's weird. Because normally they all show up, don't they? 4 Supreme Court justices. John Roberts, Chief Justice. Brett Kavanaugh. Hey, let's go have a beer. Amy Coney Barrett. And Elena Kagan. So who didn't show up? I think it was more surprising who didn't show up than who did. Okay, not surprising that Ketanji Brown Jackson didn't show up. Not surprising that Sonia Sotomayor didn't show up. But Neil Gorsuch didn't show up. Samuel Alito didn't show up. Clarence Thomas didn't show up. What's that about? 50 Democrats, supposedly, didn't show up. Which, Frankly, I almost didn't show up. I'm thinking, should I watch this? This is going to drive me crazy. Am I going to have to sit here and listen to this BS he's going to spew? But because I am who I am, of course, I sat and watched the whole thing. So very strange. I'm not going to talk about the screaming. I'm not going to talk about the sign that somebody held up. It's a lot. My point here is that it's a lot worse than it used to be, and it doesn't have to be. We really need somebody who's going to pull us together. I think it's not a big surprise that Trump became president right after we had our first African American president. The pendulum swings. And well, now we need it to swing in the other direction come 2028 to somebody who can bring us together. Because Trump not only can't bring us together, he doesn't want to bring us together. We're going to talk about that at the very end. So what is this really about? Is it about Democrats not wanting to protect Americans? No. It's all about who controls the narrative. That's what it's about. Accepting the framing or rejecting it. Trump chose a framing that forced a visible contrast. He did a great job. Here's what I want to know. This is what I want to know. See if you can leave a comment or two. I don't know if you've made it this far, but is there anybody here? Nope, there's nobody here. Why do I do these live streams? I could spend my time making videos that I can actually edit. I think, I only have 100 subscribers. I think I have like 108. I didn't know why I'm doing live streams. Let me know if you want me to continue to do them. I mean, I know I'll get views on this later, but it's just very discouraging for me to do this. Anyway, but I want to know your answers to some of these questions. Do you think that the Democrats made a mistake by staying seated? Or was it a matter of principle, right? Was that a way to not reinforce that negative narrative that Trump laid out? I'd like to know what you think, but please be respectful. A lot of my videos before were how-to videos, how to file for your sibling, how to file for your mother, your father, blah, blah, blah. But I've started to get more and more into this commentary stuff. So I'm getting more and more nasty comments, which I'm trying not to respond to. I don't need to get into a pissing fight with somebody that disagrees with me. But I have a pretty thick skin. You don't have to worry about me. I'm from Philly. I have a pretty thick skin. Now, the one thing, or two little things I want you to think about. One, I want you to keep an eye on Tuesday's primary. That's in 2 days in Texas. James Tallarico. James Tallarico, 8th generation Texan. His family was there even when Texas belonged to Mexico. Okay. He is vying against Jasmine Crockett to be the nominee, the Democrat nominee for state Senate. And if you remember, Stephen Colbert had an interview with this guy. And FCC comes down, tells CBS, because you're not sharing equal time with Jasmine Crockett, you're not allowed to air this. We don't want you to air this interview with James Tallarico. So what does CBS do? They think, okay, we won't air it. So what does Stephen Colbert do? He puts it on YouTube. And it gets over 5.5 million views. Oh my God. If they had just let the guy air it on his station, on his little show that he's got, I don't know. It wouldn't have come close to how many views it eventually got. My father used to always say, and the sweetest words to a novelist was to find out that the Archdiocese of Boston has banned your book. If you wrote a book and it was banned in Boston, that's fabulous news for you, because everybody and their brother wants to buy that book and find out what was so bad about that book. Why was it bad? Same thing here. If they had just let this thing go, they'd be like, oh, he looks interesting, and that would have been it. But instead, because there was such a brouhaha, 5.5 million views on YouTube. I like this guy. Remember what I was saying about how the pendulum swings? I think, well, Joe Rogan, believe it or not, Joe Rogan has suggested that he's going to be the Democratic nominee for president in 2028. Well, first of all, he's got to win the election as a senator in Texas in November. If he doesn't do that, he's just going to be Beto O'Rourke. And, he's going to be that. What was that guy's name? Who's trying to flip Texas blue? If James Tallarico can flip that Senate seat blue, he's got a very good chance. He's going to at least be one of the guys standing up on the stage. And if you go up on YouTube and just key in James Tallarico and listen to some of the things that he has said, he's so quiet. He's studying to be a minister. He's in a seminary. And he's very pro, he's a Democrat. He's pro medicinal marijuana, at least. He didn't want the 10 Commandments up in the classrooms. But when he confronts people who have a problem with those two positions, he can end up convincing people that he's right. He makes you think about things in a whole different way. Jasmine Crockett, on the other hand, she's been backed for this particular primary by Kamala Harris. Now, listen, I didn't want Kamala Harris in the first place. I liked Keisha Lance Bottoms. She was the mayor of Atlanta. I liked her. But Kamala Harris, it was all about, I just knew the DNC was going to choose her. And it's all about who she knows and, what kind of connection she has with the Democrats. Well, that's exactly what Kamala Harris is doing with Crockett. She says, oh, this is a good friend of mine. She's a fighter. Not a fighter wannabe, but she's a real fighter, and that's what we need in Texas right now. How much you want to make a bet? I'm thinking Crockett is going down, because at this point, I don't think there's many Democrats who actually like Kamala Harris. Feel free to disagree with me. Write a comment. Let me know. But yeah, she got the short end of the stick. The whole Joe Biden thing. I'm not going to get into all that. But, the fact that she thinks that she's going to be able to step in and her endorsement of Jasmine Crockett is going to push her over the edge. I don't think so. I think those 5.5 million views might do something that's going to help the other side. And, Keisha Lance Bottoms, I looked her up. Guess what? She's running for governor of Georgia. And that's going to be in their primary too. So I'm going to keep an eye on that, because I liked her. She was pro-police during a time when the police were like killing all these people of color. But she didn't buy into the defund the police BS. I don't know, who came up with that idea? I don't know. But as mayor of Atlanta, she's got executive experience. And now she's running for governor. She's hoping to be the Democratic nominee. So the elections, this is all about elections. And I agree that it was very bad optics for the Democrats to just sit down. Not great optics to have people screaming at them, you should be ashamed. You should be ashamed. But we're going to see what happens. We're going to see what happens with these elections, the primaries coming up this spring, and then we're going to see what happens in November. Anyway, tell me what you think. Do you think that the Democrats made a big mistake? What should they have done? Should they have stood up? Because then you're just saying, I agree, that you only can protect the Americans. You don't have to protect the illegal aliens. Yeah, actually, they do. They do have to protect everyone who comes into this country, who lives in this country, or even just visits in this country. That's the job of the government, is to protect the people, not just the U.S. citizens. That's my ever so humble opinion. I'm going to turn this off. And is anybody here? I'll bet you there is no one here. Oh, there is somebody here. There's somebody here. Thank you for being here. I wish you had written some kind of a comment, but that's okay. And because I'm getting off now. But I'd love to hear what your opinion is. Just be nice about it, okay? Don't start calling me all kinds of names. Unless they're nice names. Well, I got to go. Thanks for showing up. Oh, there's two people. Now there's two people. Well, I'm still leaving because you should have shown up at noon when I said that I was going to be. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I hope that you. Oh, and one just left. I don't know. That's another thing. If you want to leave a comment in the question, if you want to leave a statement in the comments, should I be doing these live streams? I mean, I only have 108 subscribers. If you like this, subscribe. Leave a comment, leave a like, do something, engage a little something. Because I feel like it's a waste. I feel like I'm really wasting a lot of time I could spend on making better videos than what I'm doing. By the way, I'm trying to get out of this bedroom. I can't wait. But I have to move everything downstairs, and that's problematic for me. But sooner or later, you're not going to see a bed sitting there in the corner. God, I can't stand it. It's a long story about why I'm up here. Never mind. I digress. I'm going to leave. I think I couldn't put an end screen on this, but maybe once it stops being live and it becomes like a regular video, I'll be able to add an end screen. And I'll try to put something in there, some kind of a playlist probably I'll do something about birthright citizenship. In case you didn't catch that, April 1st, SCOTUS is going to be taking hearing oral arguments about whether or not kids born to folks who aren't legally here, if they should still be U.S. citizens or not. April 1st. I'm not kidding. It's not a joke, unfortunately. And then we'll hear in June, we'll hear what their decision is about that. But we'll have an idea just from the types of questions that they're asking. Again, John Roberts could be very, very important. Amy Coney Barrett could be very important. Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas. They don't even have, speaking of not showing up, they don't even have to show up for that because we already know how they're going to vote. But anyway, let me get out of here. And I thank the people who did show up a little bit. A couple of people showed up. And leave some comments. I'd love to hear what you think. I'll talk to you later.